The unraveling darkness of Blackwood Manor. The rain was no longer a gentle drumbeat, it was a furious, driving assault against the windshield, mirroring the tempest raging within Thomas Ashton. The funeral of Sarah had been a blur of polite condolences and averted gazes. Her casket, lowered into the cold, damp earth, had felt like the closing of a chapter, but in retrospect, it was merely the opening of a far more terrifying book. Oak Haven, the city he had called home, now felt like a stage set for a macabre play, the year 2018 a timestamp on his unfolding horror. He had driven back to his third-floor apartment, Unit 3B, in a daze. The familiar comfort of his home was gone, replaced by a chilling sense of foreboding. The air was heavy, thick with an unnatural stillness that pressed in on him. The metallic tang he had initially dismissed lingered, a persistent, unpleasant odor that seemed to cling to everything. The first cracks in his reality appeared in Emily. The other woman in his life, the one he had been juggling alongside Sarah. Before Sarah's death, Emily had been a force of nature, intelligent, passionate, with a cynical wit that always made him laugh. Now, she was a ghost of her former self. Her vibrant energy was gone, replaced by a profound apathy. Her eyes, once so expressive, were now like dull glass, reflecting nothing. Her voice was flat, devoid of inflection, and her laughter, a sound he cherished, was a forgotten melody. He tried to talk to her, to reach her, but it was like trying to grasp smoke. Her responses were minimal, her gaze distant. He would find her sitting for hours, staring blankly at a wall, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. It wasn't just grief, this was something deeper, something that had stolen her essence. It was as if a vital part of her had been excised, leaving behind an empty shell. Then came the news of Mark. His best friend, his confidant, his anchor in the stormy seas of his life. The police had called it an accident. A fall down the stairs. But Thomas knew Mark. Mark was careful, grounded. The explanation felt flimsy, a convenient dismissal of a more sinister truth. Mark had been the first to express concern about the changes in Emily, the first to notice the strange atmosphere that had begun to permeate Thomas's life. He had called it a bad vibe, a feeling of being watched. After Mark's death, the feeling of being watched intensified, becoming a suffocating constant. It was no longer a subtle prickling, it was a tangible presence, a cold breath on his neck, a weight on his chest. He would wake up in the dead of night, his heart hammering, convinced that someone was standing over his bed, their eyes on him in the darkness. He would snap on the light, his gaze sweeping the room, but there was never anyone there. Yet, the feeling lingered, a chilling certainty that he was not alone. The hauntings began subtly, insidiously. Objects would disappear, a book he was reading, his keys, his wallet. He would search frantically, only to find them later in plain sight, in places he had already looked. It was a deliberate, mocking game, a demonstration of power by an unseen hand. Then the manifestations escalated. The lights in his apartment would flicker violently, plunging the room into sudden darkness. The temperature would plummet in specific areas, creating pockets of intense cold that defied explanation. Doors would creak open on their own, and sometimes, he would hear faint whispers, just at the edge of hearing, like dry leaves skittering across a frozen ground. The whispers were indistinct at first, but they grew clearer, coalescing into a single, chilling name, Elias. He was losing sleep, his nerves frayed. The nightmares were relentless, a recurring tableau of a tall, gaunt figure in the shadows, its eyes burning with an unnatural light. Sometimes, the figure was accompanied by a swirling, glowing white mist, a formless entity that flowed and shifted, leaving behind a profound sense of dread. This glowing white figure would sometimes detach itself from the shadowed form, drifting towards him with an unnerving silence, its edges blurring and reforming like liquid light. Driven by a desperate need for answers, Thomas delved into the history of Oak Haven, searching for anything that might explain the name Elias. He stumbled upon the local legends surrounding Blackwood Manor, an abandoned estate notorious for its dark history. The stories spoke of a man named Elias Thorne, a wealthy recluse who had died in the manor in 1948 under mysterious circumstances. The tales painted him as a man consumed by an unhealthy obsession with a young woman, an obsession so powerful that it was said to have lingered beyond the grave. The specific details of his death were murky, whispered about in hushed tones. Some spoke of suicide, others of something far more sinister. The articles mentioned a specific room in the manor, a room where his obsession was said to have reached its peak, room 7B on the 3rd floor. The connection between Elias Thorne and the chilling events in his life was a horrifying revelation. The name, the obsession, the year 1948, the room number 7B, it all resonated with a terrifying familiarity, like a forgotten memory clawing its way to the surface. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that Blackwood Manor held the key to his nightmare. Despite the warnings, the rational part of his brain screaming at him to stay away, he knew he had to go there. He had to confront the source of the darkness that was consuming his life. Blackwood Manor stood on a desolate hill overlooking Oak Haven, a skeletal silhouette against the bruised twilight sky. The air around the manor was heavy and still, carrying the scent of decay and something else, something ancient and malevolent. The iron gates were rusted and overgrown, groaning in protest as he pushed them open. The grounds were overgrown, the once manicured gardens now a tangled wilderness. He found a way in through a broken window on the ground floor, the glass shards crunching under his feet like brittle bones. The air inside was thick with dust and the cloying smell of mildew and something else, something metallic and unpleasant, the same scent that had permeated his apartment. The silence was absolute, broken only by the frantic pounding of his own heart. He moved through the decaying halls, his flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The feeling of being watched intensified with every step, a palpable presence that pressed in on him from all sides. He could feel eyes on him, unseen but undeniably there. The whispers returned, louder now, a low, guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls. He found the grand staircase, its once opulent carpet now ripped and stained, its carved banister covered in a thick layer of grime and cobwebs. He ascended the stairs, the wood groaning under his weight, each step a terrifying ascent into the unknown. The air grew colder as he climbed, the silence deepening into an almost unbearable stillness. He reached the 3rd floor. The hallway was even darker, the air heavy and stagnant. He counted the doors, his breath catching in his throat. 1, 2, 3, 7. There it was, a door slightly ajar, a sliver of inky blackness beckoning him forward. A faint, sickeningly sweet smell, like rotting flowers and something else, something indescribably foul, drifted from within. He pushed the door open slowly, the hinges screaming in protest. The room was surprisingly bare, a dusty bed in the center, a broken dresser against the wall. But the energy within the room was overwhelming, a palpable wave of sorrow, rage, and a twisted, possessive longing. And then he saw it. In the far corner of the room, a swirling vortex of light began to form. It started as a soft glow, then expanded, intensifying into a brilliant, blinding white. The light coalesced, taking on a form. A figure, tall and gaunt, emerged from the light. It was pure white, a flowing, ethereal form that seemed to shift and blur at the edges, like mist caught in a draft. It was translucent, yet its presence was undeniable, overwhelming. And within the swirling white, 2 points of intense, burning red light appeared, like embers in the darkness. The figure drifted towards him, silent and unervingly smooth. As it approached, the burning red eyes fixed on him, and he felt a wave of pure, unadulterated terror wash over him, a terror so profound it threatened to shatter his sanity. This was the figure from his nightmares. This was Elias Thorne. He tried to back away, but his legs felt like lead. The ghost figure stopped just a few feet from him, its head tilted slightly, as if examining him with a chilling curiosity. The air around it was frigid, the cold biting into his skin, a supernatural cold that felt like it was reaching for his very soul. Then, a voice, not spoken aloud, but echoing directly in his mind, filled the room with a chilling intensity that seemed to vibrate in his bones. You are the one. The one who stole her light. Thomas's mind reeled. Her light? Who was he talking about? Sarah? The ghost figure seemed to read his thoughts. Sarah. My Sarah. I watched her. For so long. Her beauty, her innocence. She was meant for me. And then, you appeared. The spectral form raised a translucent hand, its fingers long and skeletal, pointing directly at Thomas. You drew her away. You took what was mine. A horrifying realization dawned on Thomas. Elias Thorne's obsession hadn't died with him. It had lingered, a malevolent force reaching across the decades, fixating on Sarah. And when Thomas had entered her life, becoming the object of her affection, Elias had seen him as a rival, an obstacle to his twisted desires. I took what was yours, the voice echoed, a chilling satisfaction in its tone. Her light is extinguished. Her warmth is gone. Like all the others who dared to stand between me and what I desired. Others? Thomas managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. Those who felt my presence, who tried to intervene, the ghost figure replied, the burning red eyes fixated on him. Your friend, Mark. He was perceptive. He felt the shift. He knew something was wrong. He tried to warn you. A pest. Easily crushed. The truth of Mark's death, confirmation from the source of his terror, sent a wave of nausea through him. Elias Thorne had killed him. And Emily, the chilling change in Emily. And her, the ghost continued, a hint of cruel amusement in its voice. The other one. The one who still clings to you. Her light is fading. I am draining her, slowly. Turning her into an empty vessel. An empty shell, like the others. The image of Emily's vacant eyes, her listless demeanor, the gradual erosion of her personality, it all made horrifying sense. Elias Thorne was a psychic vampire, feeding on the life force of those connected to Thomas, those who stood in his way. You are mine now, the ghost declared, drifting closer, the intense cold radiating from it almost unbearable. Your grief, your fear, your isolation, it is delicious. You will be mine, just as Sarah should have been. You will be my eternal companion, here, in the silence of Blackwood Manor. The glowing white figure reached out a translucent hand towards him. Thomas could feel the icy cold reaching for him, a cold that felt like it was freezing his very soul. He finally found his voice, a desperate, hoarse cry. No. You can't have me. Leave me alone. The ghost figure seemed to regard him with an almost pitying expression. Foolish mortal. You are already mine. You are bound to me, through Sarah, through your fear. You are tethered to this place, to this darkness. As the spectral hand reached out further, a surge of primal terror, a desperate instinct for survival, flooded through Thomas. He had to escape. He had to break free from this horrifying embrace. With a guttural cry, he lunged back, stumbling over something unseen. He turned and fled, the creaking floorboards echoing his frantic flight. The ghost figure's chilling laughter, A dry, rustling sound like dead leaves echoed in his mind, a terrifying accompaniment to his escape. He ran down the stairs, the darkness pressing in on him, the whispers of Elias Thorne following close behind. He could feel the ghost's presence, a cold shadow pursuing him relentlessly. He burst out of the broken window, gasping for air, the cool rain a desperate blessing against his burning skin. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs ached, until he reached his car. He fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so violently he could barely insert the key into the ignition. He started the engine, the roar of the motor a lifeline in the terrifying silence of the manor grounds. He sped away, the old Ford rattling and shaking as he drove as fast as he dared, the image of the glowing white figure, its burning red eyes, and its chilling voice burned into his mind. He drove back to Oakhaven, back to his apartment, but he knew, with a chilling certainty, that he had not escaped. The feeling of being watched was still there, a persistent, terrifying weight. He had stirred something ancient and malevolent, something that refused to be confined to the past. The veil between worlds, once a concept from ghost stories, was real, and for Thomas Ashton, it never closed. His apartment, Unit 3B, was no longer a sanctuary. It was a cage. Every shadow held a potential threat. Every creak of the building was the sound of footsteps that weren't there. He felt like he was living in a perpetual state of siege, his reality constantly being tested, his sanity slowly eroding. Emily continued to fade. Her skin was now almost translucent, her movements slow and sluggish. She was like a doll, an empty vessel that was slowly being drained of life. Thomas tried everything he could think of to help her, but nothing worked. He knew it was Elias, slowly consuming her light, punishing Thomas by destroying those he cared about. The hauntings in the apartment escalated. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut with violent force, and the whispers of Elias Thorne were now almost constant, a low, menacing murmur that followed him everywhere. Sometimes, he would see fleeting glimpses of the glowing white figure in his peripheral vision, a terrifying confirmation that his tormentor was always near. He sought help, desperately. He talked to priests, to parapsychologists, to anyone who would listen. They offered sympathy, advice, even attempts at spiritual cleansing, but nothing worked. The darkness that clung to him was too powerful, too ancient. He was a marked man, tethered to a malevolent entity that would not rest until it had consumed him entirely. One night, the haunting reached a terrifying crescendo. He was alone in his apartment, the silence broken only by the frantic pounding of his heart. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The air grew impossibly cold, a biting, supernatural chill that felt like ice shards in his lungs. Then, in the center of the room, a swirling vortex of the same blinding white light he had seen in Blackwood Manor began to form. It grew larger, more intense, and from its depths, the glowing white figure of Elias Thorne emerged. It was more solid this time, more defined, its burning red eyes fixed on him with a chilling intensity. It drifted towards him, its movements impossibly smooth and silent. The air around it crackled with a malevolent energy. "You cannot hide from me, Thomas," the voice echoed in his mind, no longer a whisper, but a booming declaration that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. "You are mine. Your struggle is futile. I will consume you, just as I have consumed the others." Thomas was paralyzed by fear, his body frozen by the sheer terror emanating from the spectral form. The glowing white figure reached out its translucent hand, its fingers long and skeletal, reaching for his chest. He could feel the intense cold radiating from it, a cold that felt like it was freezing his blood, his very soul. "Embrace the darkness, Thomas," the voice whispered, now close, right beside his ear. "Become one with me. We will be together, forever. Here, in the echoing silence. Just as the spectral hand was about to touch him, a faint, almost imperceptible sound cut through the chilling silence. It was a weak, raspy breath. Thomas's gaze flickered to the doorway of his apartment. Emily stood there, a frail, almost translucent figure in the darkness. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes sunken. But in those eyes, despite the exhaustion, despite the draining of her life force, a spark of defiance, a flicker of the strong woman she once was, remained. The glowing white figure paused, its attention shifting to Emily. Ah, the empty shell. Still clinging to the living world. Pathetic. Emily's voice was weak, a mere whisper, but it carried an undeniable strength. Leave him alone. He is not yours. The ghost figure let out a dry, rattling sound that might have been laughter. You have nothing left, girl. Your light is almost gone. You are a husk. But as the ghost spoke, a faint, warm glow began to emanate from Emily, a soft, golden light that seemed to push back against the intense cold of the spectral presence. It was weak, fragile, but it was there, a defiant spark in the overwhelming darkness. The ghost figure recoiled slightly, its burning red eyes narrowing. What is this? This, resistance? Emily took a step forward, the golden light around her intensifying slightly, a shield against the malevolent energy. It's not just love. It's resilience. Something you can't understand. The ghost figure let out a guttural shriek, a sound of pure rage and frustration. Impossible. You are empty. You are nothing. But the golden light from Emily was affecting it. The glowing white figure flickered violently, its form becoming unstable, distorted. Seeing a chance, fueled by a desperate need to protect Emily and a surge of adrenaline born of terror and defiance, Thomas forced himself to move. He lunged forward, not knowing what he was doing, driven by pure instinct. He threw himself between Emily and the spectral form. His physical body passed through the ghost, but the force of his movement, combined with the resistance from Emily's light, seemed to disrupt the ghost's energy field. The glowing white figure writhed and contorted, its form dissolving into a chaotic vortex of light and shadow. The chilling voice of Elias Thorne echoed one last time in Thomas's mind, filled with a terrifying promise. This is not over, Thomas. You are mine. The veil, it never closes. I will wait. I will watch. And I will claim you. The vortex vanished, leaving behind a profound silence, broken only by their ragged breaths. The cold spots remained, the air still held a faint chill, but the oppressive weight of the ghost's presence had lessened. Emily stumbled forward, collapsing into his arms, her body trembling, but her eyes held a flicker of life that hadn't been there before. They clung to each other, survivors of a battle they hadn't understood until it was upon them. The encounter had been horrifying, soul-shattering, but it had also forged a bond between them, a shared understanding of the darkness that now clung to their lives. They moved out of the apartment, leaving behind the echoing silence and the chilling memories. But they knew they hadn't escaped. The feeling of being watched never completely went away. The air around them always held a faint chill, and sometimes, in the quiet moments, they would hear the faint, distant echo of a chilling whisper, a reminder that Elias Thorne was still out there, waiting, watching. They learned to live with the constant threat, to recognize the subtle signs of the haunting, to protect themselves as best they could. Their lives were forever marked by the darkness they had encountered, a perpetual dance on the edge of the abyss. The veil between worlds remained open for them, a terrifying reality that some ghosts refused to fade away, forever bound to those they desire, leaving behind empty shells and echoing silence. The haunting of Thomas and Emily had not ended. It had merely entered a new, more terrifying phase, a chilling testament to the enduring power of obsession, the fragility of the veil between worlds, and the horrifying truth that for them, the veil between worlds, it never closed. Their story became a whispered legend in Oak Haven, a cautionary tale of a love that transcended death, twisted into a malevolent obsession that refused to die, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and the chilling knowledge that sometimes, the gates of hell are not a metaphor, but a terrifying reality that opens for those who dare to cross the wrong path, leaving them forever trapped in the unraveling darkness of Blackwood Manor and the relentless pursuit of a ghost who would never let go.